Hey there, YouTubers. With all the marches going on nowadays, one might mistake the Gears of Mechanus for reaching its 17th cycle, and not the work of lawful outsiders. Let's get to that and all things inevitable. And let's get our Modron, WebDM. So, Jim, we're back to the plains.
We're back to the plains. Here we are.
Let's talk about Modrons. What the hell is a Modron?
Modron, in one sense, is a lawful outsider, to borrow a 3rd edition Pathfinder term. And I find it very useful.
Yeah.
Okay, we've got demons and devils. Demons and devils, in some sense, are about promoting corruption in mortals and sort of advancing the cause of evil. Angels and other celestials are about thwarting cosmic evil and sort of promoting goodness and harmony and justice. Then what in the world do lawful outsiders do, like Modrons? I kind of come to the conclusion after reading the monster manual, and you've sort of reached a similar conclusion, where it was like they're promoting this version of order, this monolithic, purposeful version of order, and reordering the multiverse according to that.
Yeah.
And I find that, at least with Modrons, and there's another type of lawful outsider that hasn't made it into 5th edition yet, but I really, really hope it does, the Inevitable, that they have 2 different takes on this idea of cosmic law.
Yeah.
This is a type of monster that speaks to a larger cosmology in the D&D world, that speaks to larger conflicts that play out across multiple campaign worlds that make the multiverse of D&D as amazing as it is. Modrons and Inevitables, as lawful outsiders, sort of fill that role. They're promoting law and order. They are upholding the laws of the multiverse. And in the case of the Modrons, every 289 years, are going out on their great Modron march to collect information for their patron Primus.
Yeah.
And maybe that's all they're doing. Maybe they're doing more. And so I look at that and I go, okay, we've got good outsiders. We've got evil outsiders. Now we have lawful outsiders that are fulfilling some kind of function and role. And what can we do with them? How can we fit them in a campaign? And how can we make them interesting and fun?
Exactly. Do you just give them helmets and lawbringers? Or just let them running around and be like, I am the law.
I am the law.
I mean, I'd love to play a judge that's a Modron. I think that would that would be funny.
Well, if we're playing a Planescape game, you can play like a harmonium officer that goes around and enforces that kind of cosmic justice.
I love the idea that there's a character out there that is basically devoid of conscience.
Yeah.
But is just following the rules. We need to follow the rules.
We need to follow the rules. And what I love the most about Modrons and is what I love about the movie Brazil. And when I think of Modrons, I think of Brazil.
Yeah.
And in that there's this bizarre, arcane bureaucracy that exists, and who does anyone understand it all? You're just a cog in the machine, man.
Exactly.
You're just a monodrone in the machine.
Yep.
And so
just keep the wheels spinning.
Keep the wheels spinning. Do your one task. Speak your 48-word message, and then that's it. And so I find that the Modrons have this bizarreness to them, and are a nice way to interject maybe some comedy, some wackiness into a D&D world.
Yeah.
As well as sort of the inevitability and also the absurdity of this upholding law and order to the degree that you exclude everything else. So the idea that the Modrons are going around the multiverse during their great Modron march and are cataloging what's going on in the outer planes and the different gate towns of the Great Wheel, that they're doing some kind of reconnaissance and information gathering to bring back to Primus, that they're going on raids in the more chaotic aligned planes to, the demons and the slot and even the petitioners on Isgard and Arborea, they're not letting Modrons out of their planes without a fight. Exactly. This is law and chaos here.
Right.
It's just as important as good and evil.
Exactly.
I don't know. So that's sort of where I start with Modrons. The Inevitables have a bit more of a understandable purpose in the planar cosmology, in that they uphold the rules of the multiverse. Yeah. And they enforce those rules against rule breakers. And so they're a bit more maybe traditional enemies in that sense. Whereas the Modrons are just like, man, I don't even know what's going on with them. And if they show up in the campaign world, maybe they're doing something that appears bizarre and random because you don't have their understanding of law that they do.
Exactly. And I mean, that's the thing is, whether or not you understand it, they have to do their job, or
Right.
the lights don't stay on.
Or the lights don't
right?
stay on. Yeah.
If they don't do their job, law falls apart, chaos reigns, and that's
Yes.
it.
And
so
that's it.
even if you don't understand it, hey, it exists, and
Right.
that's fine.
Right.
But going to your point about comedy, the idea, and we were talking about this earlier, the idea of you being in a battle and a bunch of robots coming up and asking you how things are going and
that
taking
feel?
their senses.
Right.
You got struck. Are you doing okay with that?
What kind of symptoms are you going through? Describe the sensation of the symptoms.
I'm bleeding.
And you're just standing over you, recording it in their logbooks. So I think I take this idea of the Great Modron March, which is both a Planescape adventure from 2nd edition. It's one of the few in my Planescape collection that I don't have the physical copy of. So I can't speak to the adventure itself. But the Great Modron March is this event that takes place once every 289 years, where the great cycles of the planes have set in motion, the wheels of Mechanus kind of blah, blah, blah thing, and Primus sends out an army of 10,000 Modrons to travel around the planes, takes a couple of years, and presumably come back with information. And so I'm thinking like, okay, how do we work this into a campaign? This is what the Monster Manual tells us about Modrons. How can we create an adventure or an encounter or something around it? And I think of things like the battle, where it's just like, what if you have a campaign world where you're just doing your normal thing, except people, you start incorporating in your random tables or your things like a squadron of 2 monodrones and a duodrone. And it's just like, they just show up in the middle of a battle and just kind of hover there or stand there, not participating, but just observing and just watching what's going on. And maybe that just weirds out the players, and now they're curious about it. Maybe they try to talk to them and they don't get much of a response.
Right.
And they're the advanced forces of this great Modron army that's going to come through. And it's like a giant scientific expedition in force, right? with ethnographers and lexicographers and planar scholars and magical arcanic sort of,
Arcanic mechanics.
That come through and catalog everything, and some of it's bizarre and weird, and they're counting the number of tears that this person cried, or the number of hairs on this mole's head, or just bizarre things. Presumably because at some point they're going to find out what's not in its place, and they're going to try to put it there. I don't know. I don't know what you would do with that as a DM. Are they the antagonists? Are they not? Are they just a complicating factor? And they're not necessarily, it's not like a planar invasion where it's like, oh great, the demon lords showed up again. Like, how many times can this world sustain a demon or devil lord just invading?
Yeah.
What if it was just an army of otherwise kind of benign but meddlesome Modrons who are coming through and they're just asking questions, taking a census, making an assessment of the planes, or whatever it is. So,
because that would be pretty disrupting. Because imagine if you went to the mall and the survey people at the mall didn't take no for an answer and just followed everyone around.
Yeah.
And like, what are you buying? How much did you pay?
Taking your measurements while you're in the middle of a fight, or otherwise trying to do something that that you don't want to be bothered by. Maybe they're more of an annoyance, hindrance, and then it's just like I said, a complicating factor in a campaign world. I don't know. It's one of those things where I look at the lawful outsiders and I go, what's their reason for not just staying in Mechanus and just being there? And this idea that they go on a massive information gathering march, and it inevitably leads to conflict. The Monster Manual says only a handful of them make it back. Only some of them make it back. So it's dangerous for them.
Yeah.
So I don't know. That's where I end up with Modrons. They have this sort of monolithic purpose and order. They have their own conception of order that they're bringing to the planes, and presumably the prime material. And you could really just do a lot of fun things with that.
But it's tragic, them coming back into the gates of Mechanus like Napoleon returning
just
from
decimated.
Russia.
Yep. Just absolutely decimated, or even worse than decimated.
But what's the opposite of that?
I don't know. Ravaged.
Yeah.
And so I think that if you're going to incorporate lawful outsiders in your campaign, they're going to be creatures that you encounter or building a campaign around them. The Great Modron March can be an interesting thing for that. You can set it in the Outer Planes and have your characters be maybe a member of a community in the Outlands. That's assuming you're using the Great Wheel cosmology that's in the player's handbook. That they're sort of in the gate town. What happens when they get there? Maybe your characters are following the march and dealing with the calamity and the chaos, ironically, that follows in the wake of this. And, you know,
Every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction.
There's an equal and opposite reaction, and that's what I love about the conflict between law and chaos in a cosmic sense in Dungeons and Dragons. And to me, it's more interesting than good versus evil.
Yeah.
It's very traditional, and sort of it's easy to wrap our heads around sort of good and evil. There's a lot about it that's very classical.
Exactly.
Law and chaos has a much different perspective. When
pure law and chaos, because when you remove morality,
right,
and conscience, it's hard to think about that from just this is the law.
In Planescape, and I know we kind of dance around the Planescape topic quite a bit. It's a setting that I love and really like, and have run a couple of campaigns in. But you know that the Blood War is fueled by a conflict within the evil planes over whether the chaotic interpretation of evil or the lawful interpretation of evil shall reign supreme.
Right.
And it's presumably been going on for millennia and with no end in sight. And so the idea that each of these planes on that great wheel are in conflict with those that are sort of opposite it, and that there's this great cosmic conflict that's always kind of kept in the balance is what keeps the multiverse going.
Exactly. And you got to make sure everything balances out.
Everything balances out.
And hey, this is part of it. I mean, maybe, like you were saying, like why wouldn't they just stay in Mechanus? Think about the fact that the chaos that is sown in their wake is what keeps the balance. Because if they did just stay in Mechanus, maybe the planes would get too lawful. Like
maybe so.
If there wasn't that kind of craziness that happened every now and again, all the conflict that arises and the bloodshed and the whatever, who knows? I mean,
who knows?
But that's the thing is now we're getting philosophical about it.
Well, I mean, it's Planescape.
But it's Planescape,
philosophers with clubs, famously.
And it's a club of philosophers with clubs too. There is a club for that.
So I mean, like looking at the Modrons from a game mechanic perspective, you know, they're not particularly powerful. They're sort of low-ranking extraplanar creatures, and so in that respect, you can start inserting them in the campaign at very low levels, if you're worried about, say, your players having a tussle with one of them, with a group of them, and you know, it's not ending up in a TPK or an accidental wipe. That said, when there's a lot of them, they're going to be a real problem.
I mean, there are 10,000 of them.
Yeah, on this march alone, no telling how many of them are back on Mechanus. And so I think, you know, when you're looking at them from a mechanical standpoint, think about how their command structure works. So the Monster Manual tells us, well, a Modron of any given rank only talks to those immediately above it and immediately below it.
Yeah.
And try to incorporate that in your role playing of them. A duodrone monitors 2 monodrones because those monodrones have a single task they do, and they can't think independently. And the higher up you get up this ladder or this hierarchy, the more independent you get, the more creative you get. Trying to convince a quadrone or a pentadrone to go rogue, or to abandon its programming and do something different. Presenting it with a logical paradox or something might be a way to role play with them. I think that there's just a lot of fun with them. And you can have kind of silly and absurd encounters, specifically with the Modron, in a way that, number one, you wouldn't expect to have those kinds of encounters with a lawful creature.
Right.
But also just because you can highlight the absurdity that an utter adherence to order brings if you take it to its most insane conclusion.
We knew we'd find ourselves here in the conversation, so let's move on to inevitables.
It was inevitable that we would get to the inevitables.
They're not in 5th edition.
They're not in 5th edition yet. They were a monster that was sort of introduced in 2nd edition, or at least one of the inevitables was, and then further fleshed out in 3rd edition. You know, for our viewers who didn't play 3rd edition, or you know they skipped those editions of D&D, they're more robotic kind of the sort of machine intelligences that keep and uphold certain laws of the multiverse.
Right.
So the big 3 that were in 3rd edition, they do things like punish oath breakers, people that deliberately break their oaths, and inevitable will go after them. People that cheat death, whether being raised dead one too many times, or through lichdom, that try to go and permanently kill that being that keeps on cheating death. Or if there's a being that's escaped punishment of some kind, an inevitable will be sent after them to kind of bring them to justice.
Or say if some players get a wish and they're jealous of another player.
Right.
And they use that wish to take his stuff away.
Take stuff away.
Instead of the fates coming,
right.
maybe an inevitable
shows up. So the way I would use them is they are the cosmic policemen.
Yeah.
So
they're the judges.
They're the judges. So from a mechanical perspective, I think the angels work perfectly well in just a rough estimation of power. It's not a one-to-one translation. The inevitables and the powers that they had in 3rd edition are not the same that the angels have in 5th edition. But if you're just looking for a quick and easy reskinning of a monster, the Deva, the Planetar, and the Solar in the monster manual make fine versions of the inevitables.
Yeah.
And
right quick, can you let our viewers know where they can find info on the inevitables?
I mean, a quick Google search is going to bring up all the information that you really need to know how to run them. And my recommendation would be going to just either the Pathfinder SRD or the D20 SRD. Yeah. And the system reference document. And it's a free document. That's all you need to know. If you're ever curious about what was going on in 3rd edition, just look there. You're not going to get any descriptions of them, but a quick image search will quickly bring up.
And they do look cool.
They do look really cool. They're just sort of these intricate clockwork kind of robots or
like
machines.
A Pegasus with wings.
With wings and chains for hands.
I'm sorry, a centaur. My bad.
Yeah.
A centaur with wings.
Winged centaur. Yes, Pegasus with wings would be
a Pegacentaur. That sounds like something totally different.
Right.
Don't try pegging a centaur.
Don't try pegging a centaur.
Anyway.
Big, strong animals, and they might come after you.
They kick.
Man beasts.
And they kick.
And so maybe once you've gone through the monster manual, you found you're gonna be all right over there.
Just trying to get rid of a mental image that I didn't want in the first place. So anyway,
what are they going to do? What are the inevitables going to do?
Yeah.
I see them as they're the timeline police. Once you start getting up into the kind of D&D that becomes cosmic, where plane hopping becomes common, then inevitables should start to be more prevalent in your campaign. Is your wizard casting a wish? Then maybe if they also have a see invisibility up, they notice that there's an inevitable just sitting there watching them. Just like, what are you doing over there? Casting a wish, huh? Better not try to do anything bad with it.
Yeah.
Like, we're going to come after you if you try to break the laws of space and time or alter this timeline. Or
swear to God, if you wish for more wishes.
If you wish for more wishes.
I will come right out of this.
Pow. And so that's the kind of thing that you can see. Are your characters dabbling in time travel and trying to find ways to alter their past or something? Then inevitables might start to show up and be like, hey, you can't do that. That's against the rules. That's against the law.
So in our evil campaign, when we went to the, what was it?
We all went to the far. You guys used the far realm to
go back in time.
Yeah, to circumvent that, and so by using the far realm and not going through the normal channels of time travel that exist in, say, for the Forgotten Realms, of which there are many. There's plenty of resources out there online for using time travel in Faerun. But by using the far realm, you sort of circumvented
their power.
The fact that the inevitables are. But that doesn't mean that those characters who participated in that time travel excursion aren't, sort of marked out. And
there was a time aberration here.
There's a time aberration
We need to call the legends in.
Absolutely.
Anyway, it's a good show.
So observing wishes, time travel magic is where inevitables are going to show up. Anything that breaks the laws of space and time, inevitable is going to be there. I like the one, they're called Maruts, and they are there that punish those who seek to cheat death. And so I really like the idea of having, say, like a mid-level character, maybe they're upper tier 2, lower tier 3. They've died a few times, been revivified, raised dead, and it's like, all right, well, we got to bust out a resurrection for this guy. And now they are on the Marut's hit list. Because it's like, you get 7. That's it, or however many it is. You get 3 resurrections, 7, however many, 100, whatever it is. You
get 11. You get 11.
Yeah, it's too many. And now you're over the line. You're cheating death.
You try to go. You try to bring Peter Capaldi in, and then they show up.
And so I think that having those kinds of things, number one, it ties things into the world. It ties the monsters in the monster manual and from previous editions into the world that you're creating. You create this cosmology. And it doesn't have to be exactly like they say in the monster manual or exactly like they say in the player's handbook. It doesn't have to be the Great Wheel. But you have these creatures that are proactive, and as the players rise up in their levels and they start adventuring, the scope of their adventures changes and changes, then the number of monsters and enemies out there, or not even enemies, just antagonists, people that might oppose them, expands. Until you start getting things like, yeah, we've got our eye on you because you've got incredible power and you better use it responsibly. And it's up to the players to either, thumb their noses at that and say nope, or enlist their aid, or they're just bring them into the fold and incorporate those elements into your campaign. So I came back and they got me the T-Rex Dino Rider, and it was just, and I brought it for show and tell. I remember bringing it to school for show and tell, just like, this is my Dino Rider. And that lasted until my brother, one day, me and my brother and my dad were wrestling, and my brother picked it up by the tail and hurled it at my dad, and it hit him right here. Like right in the eye, and it broke the thing, and he had this big bloody black eye. We had to take him to the emergency room because my brother he was, I don't know, 4, and he'd get excited and pick something up and throw it.
Over that line.
So we don't really.
Somebody's in the emergency room.
Somebody's in the emergency room. He does. He did that to me once with a gun, like a toy gun, like a cap gun. He hit me right in the eye with it. I was convinced my eye fell out. I wouldn't. I screamed hysterically. It was like Black Mamba. That's what it was like. All right, we got Modrons. We got Slod, and we got.
So a Modron is a monster.
A Modron is a monster. It is a polyhedral monster. They're based on shapes.
Oh, that's cool. So it's a geometry show then.
In a sense.
Yeah.
It's a show about lawful outsiders.
Yeah. And then slaughter chaotic outsiders.
Chaotic outsiders.
That's a nice balance.
Yeah.
We did demons and devils.
We did demons, devils, we did angels. This sort of is rounding that out. They've been requested. Modrons specifically have been requested. I've seen them.
Yeah.
People are like, what about Modrons? I'm like, what about them?
They're not that powerful, and there's a shitload of them.
There's a ton of them.
Oh wait, they go on a march every now and again.
Last time I saw dinosaurs. Early 90s TV, like kid shows like that, like SWAT Cats.
Love SWAT.
Oh, fuck. I mean, I feel like that I don't know what the state of children's television is like now.
Weird.
It seems like it's a weird time.
What was the cops one with the bionic cops?
It was called Cops.
Oh, it's just
COPS.
Yeah, oh, that's right.